Hi everybody, this is Kefren, your favorite French Canadian. Today I'm going to do a guide on how to boost FPS on World of Warcraft. I think my last guide was like 3 years ago, so we're going to do an update. A lot of stuff changed inside of the game. So we're going to start by Windows 10 optimization and Windows 11, and after that we're going to go inside of the game. So now the best setting for Windows for gaming. So first of all, we're going to search for game mode in the search bar. Make sure that game mode is activated for the past year. It's pretty good. You're getting a decent performance, and you're gonna make sure that all your resources are focused on the game that you're playing. For the Xbox game bar, I still recommend to deactivate this one, causing stuttering, crashing in some games. So I'm not a huge fan of the Xbox game bar. And for the capture, make sure that the background recording is at off, and also the recorded audio is at off. Another thing that I recommend, it's the hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. Make sure that you're searching for graphics setting. You will need an NVIDIA card, 1000 series or more recent. It will really help with bottlenecks. So if you have a 1050, 1050 Ti, 1060, even the 2060, you can expect a nice 2 to 5% boost. And also you can expect less stuttering when you're using that. So I really recommend to use that. Another thing that is really important, it's your driver. Make sure that you have the latest driver from AMD, NVIDIA, even Intel if you have an iGPU on your processor. So for an example here with AMD, you just click check for update and it's gonna show you if you have the latest one. You can do the same thing with NVIDIA. Another thing that I can recommend with the NVIDIA and AMD, they have an image scaling for the past a couple of months. From AMD, it's called Super Resolution, and for NVIDIA, it's NIS. I have dedicated video who's gonna show you how to use that and how to configure it. But to explain you quickly what it's about, so you need to enable this. So for example, I'm playing in 2K because my monitor is in 2K. I'm going inside of my game. I lower the resolution at 1080p, and the software will scale it back at 2K. And with this process, I can save 15-20% in my FPS. Also, you can do it if you have a 4K monitor and you want to do 1080p or 2K. You can expect a nice boost. The image quality will not be the same if you compare with native, but in some game it's working very well, and it's very tough to see the difference. So I recommend to use it if you're struggling with your FPS. Another thing that I recommend, it's your energy profile. So write energy in your search bar, go to power option. Make sure that you're running something like balance or high performance. On a desktop computer, it should not be an issue, but if you're playing on a laptop, really make sure that you're using that or a special profile for performance from your brand like Asus, Dell, or whatever. The thing is, sometimes when you plug your PC in the wall, unplug, using it with the battery, sometimes it stay at power saver and you don't want to use that when you're playing a game. So super important to be plugged in and also to use a proper performance profile. Another thing that I can recommend, it's the Intelligent Standby List Cleaner. This is a software made by the guy from DDU. It's pretty amazing, honestly. It will help if you don't have a lot of RAM in your PC. So if you have 4 gig of RAM, 8 gig, 12 gig, after that, you should be fine. Windows is doing the job properly. So it will free memory, and it's gonna make sure that it optimizes your standby list. So what I recommend normally, it's look at your total memory. Here in my case, it's 32. Just divide it by 2. So for me, it's 16. Just press start and it will run automatically, and you just lower the software like that, and you're gonna make sure it's optimized. So it's a really good software, and also it helps a little bit with stuttering, so I really recommend to use that. One last thing is I have dedicated video on my channel about overclocking CPU, overclocking GPU, depending on your brand and stuff. And it's pretty good because there are basic overclocking guide. I don't touch voltage, so it's pretty safe. You can expect sometimes 2%, 10% boost in your FPS depending on your thermal, depending on your component. But it's something that you need to look at too if you want to optimize your PC for the best performance. So now let's go inside of the game. So now inside of the game, so first of all, for the display mode, super important to use full screen. You don't want any stuttering, so I recommend to use that. For resolution scale, I recommend also to use 100%. You don't want to downscale your game. Your image quality will decrease too much, and also you don't want to upscale because you will lose a lot of performance. For anti-aliasing, I recommend something like FX AA. I'm not a huge fan of MSAA in this game. You will lose a lot of performance. Example, if you use the X8X1, you can lose like 16 to 19% of your FPS. So FXAA is doing the job. If you're playing on a very old computer with an integrated GPU, I recommend to just disable the anti-aliasing. For the vertical sync, I recommend to go with disable if you have FreeSync or G-Sync technology on your monitor. If you don't have that, I recommend to enable it and using the triple buffering over there. For general, I recommend to go with I if you have 3 gig of VRAM and more. If you have 2 gig, go with fair. If you have less than 2 gig of VRAM on your GPU, go with low. Spells density, I recommend to use some or even half. The difference between some and essential is like 1 to 2%, and it's pretty much the same for half. But after that, you will lose a lot of FPS if you're using most dynamic or everything. So again, depending on your computer, just select that. Project texture, I recommend to go with enable. Shadow quality, this one is the parameter that will provide you the most of your FPS. So if I compare low to ultra high, you have 25% difference in your FPS. And for me, shadow is not important in this game, so I'm going with low, and it will help you a lot with your FPS. Liquid detail, also I recommend to go with low. Not a huge deal, and it will help you to stabilize your FPS, less stuttering also. Particle density, I recommend to go with fair. If you're playing on a very old computer, go with low. But fair seems to be a good spot because you just see a difference of 1% between both. But after that, you will lose a lot of FPS with those parameters. Depth effect, ambient occlusion, go with low if you don't like that your image looks flat. Because when you disable it, you will have another 3% boost in your FPS. But the image looks very flat in this game without ambient occlusion, so that's why I recommend to go with low. Depth effect, compute effect, recommend to go with disable. And the other one, outline mode, I recommend to go with good. For the environment over there, you have like some kind of scale that you can change. Honestly, normally 3 and 3 for environment and ground clutter will provide you a decent image quality and a good amount of FPS. And I recommend view distance of 4. But this is really depend on your computer. Like if you have a very old computer and you're playing an integrated video card, for sure go with 1 and like 2 for your view distance. Because if you're going too high with those parameters, you will see that you will lose a lot of FPS. After that, we're going to go to advanced texture filtering. If you have like 3 gig of VRAM and more, honestly, you can run 16x over there. If you have a 2 gig card, go with something like 2x or 4x. And if you have less than that, use billionaire. Ray trace shadow, disable this. This will tank your FPS like crazy, so you don't want to use that. Ambient occlusion, I recommend to use auto detect for your tap over there. MSA, you want to use that. Multisample alpha test, also you want to disable this. For post-processing AA, again, I recommend FXAA. But if you're playing on an old computer, just remove anti-aliasing on post-process, sorry. It will help you like 3 to 4% in your FPS. Resample quality, I recommend to go with Fidel FX. It's not the 2.0 version, it's the 1.0, but still, it's a lot better than Bicubic, Billionaire, and Point. So this one, very recommended. Graphic API, you have 3 different options over there. I don't recommend to go with Legacy. If you have a very old computer, like when your GPU release, it was made to go on DirectX 11, go with this one. But if you have something recent, always use DirectX 12. You will have better FPS and also more stable FPS. So it really depends on your GPU. Physical interaction, I recommend to go with none. And the last one is your graphic card. Make sure that you select your graphic card over there. A lot of people is playing WoW on a laptop and they have like an integrated GPU and a dedicated GPU. So you want to make sure that you select your dedicated GPU over there. Super important. After that, the max foreground FPS, I'll always lock my FPS to FPS under my FreeSync range. Don't go too crazy with your FPS, honestly. You don't want to generate more heat and after that have some issue with stuttering. So make sure that you lock your FPS with the amount of hertz that you have on your monitor. For the network, I recommend to go with optimized network for speed. And if you have a very old computer with a very bad CPU, I recommend to change the sound channel at medium over there. And even your sound catch, go with 64 meg, and it will help you a lot. So this is pretty much it, guys, for my WoW guide. If you have any question, just comment in the YouTube section, post me your rig, CPU, GPU, and RAM. I will try to help you the best that I can. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Peace.